right, today we're talking about written information security policies. Why? Because it's the law. And if you break it, it can expose us to major liability, thousands and thousands of dollars. So please pay attention to this video. It's very important. Under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 201, Consumer 17, we have an obligation to protect consumers' private information and can be found liable for punitive damages as well as loss to the consumer, meaning financial loss that they may incur if we do not take all necessary precautions, reasonable or otherwise, to prevent the information from being compromised. In rentals, we are uniquely exposed to lots and lots of personal information from people. Sales, it can happen, not usually nearly as much. So what does WISP apply to? What do we mean by personal information? Well, personal information includes first name or first initial and their last name in combination with one or more of the following, specifically when they are not encrypted: social security numbers, your SSN, your driver's license number, a bank account number, a copy of the check, for example, or if they're wiring funds to us, a copy of the wire information might have it, credit card or debit card numbers, medical information or medical record numbers, health insurance information. Obviously, those two don't typically apply to us. Any federally issued identification, such as a passport, green card, I-20, their visa, any of that stuff, they all have numbers on them and they include their names. So please be aware. Where do we typically find this? Well, exactly there. Applications, for example, the application for tenancy. That's why I say in rentals, we uniquely get a lot of this information. Remember, we're putting together a bunch of information for the landlord to find out if these people are qualified. Whereas in a lending situation, the bank is probably doing that. The lender is. So in rentals, we tend to see it. However, in sales, you may find, for some reason, I have never been able to understand this, some attorneys put in the purchase and sale the social security number of the buyer or the seller. Just be aware that might be there. It's also, you'll sometimes see it on the settlement statement in sales. You'll definitely see it when you get a check from the person for the deposit or the escrow, so the earnest money deposit, the escrow, or the final payoff. So just be aware, anything that has their name or their first initial and their last name, as well as any of these types of these numbers, these personal identification numbers, that's what we consider personal information, and WISP applies to it. Application for tenancy has the social security number on it, their I-20 work visa, their fiance's visa, their whatever the visa is, that's going to have a visa number on it. Driver's license or passports have numbers, school IDs, their student ID number, that counts, that's part of it. Pay stubs and employment contracts, that might have their social on it, that might have their employee number on it, that's considered personal information. Checks, wire info, credit cards. Hopefully I've beaten this one to death a bit. Anything with an account number of any kind on it in their name, we need to be protecting. Credit reports, obvious, it's got a list of all their accounts on it. However, one thing to keep in mind with credit reports, regardless of how we transmit those, get those documents or may transmit information according to this WISP policy, credit reports may not be shared with anybody. The lesser, another agent, you are not to share credit reports. Our office will only pull credit reports for properties we manage and make decisions on. So if you're cooperating with another agent, you're working directly with the tenant, you're certainly going to want to make sure that they know that we're happy to pull together all the information, but we will not run a credit report. They can choose to run the credit report, but ultimately, if the lesser wants to see the credit report, the lesser should pull the credit report themselves. Some common places where information may be proliferated or shared: email accounts, right? Where we keep this information. We get emails from tenants all the time that copies of their photo IDs, whatever it might be. Print those out or convert them to a secure PDF, an encrypted PDF, and delete that email and the attachment. You don't want to have any unsecure, unencrypted documents on your computer or in your email. We use Gmail for the office. Gmail can be accessed on any computer once you log in. It is secure peer-to-peer, which is one of the reasons we use it. But once someone's logged in and accessing it, they can see all those attachments. Get them out of your email and get them out of your trash. Just delete them. Make sure that you only have secure PDFs. Our computers computers, when we download the info, not only is it in our email, but we download it, it goes onto the computer. If you use a public computer to access your Gmail account, you better make sure that A, you've logged out of that Gmail account, but also that if you downloaded something on the computer, it's not only deleted, it's removed from that computer's trash. It needs to be permanently deleted, not just moved to the trash can. Tablets, phones, those are other places where you might have information come up. So you want to make sure that you anywhere that you might be downloading documentation, you're deleting it as soon as you've downloaded it. You also want to make sure that, by the way, that those devices are all secured and encrypted. That's incredibly important. Talk about that in a little bit more. Cloud-based storage solutions, we might keep that information in Google Drive or Dropbox. In fact, we do suggest keeping the documentation and digital copies of the documentation in those secure cloud-based storage solutions, something that requires a password protection, that has secure socket layering where you see HTTPS, not just HTTP. But you want to make sure you're doing that not only on an encrypted platform, but the document itself is encrypted. How do we do that? Well, like we talked about before, printer, when you were introduced to the office, you found out our printer always scans to secure PDF, and there's software that can convert any PDF into a secure PDF. By the way, interesting to know, a copier, a fax, and a printer all have history in them. Not much we could do about that one, but be aware that those can hold history of what they've printed. So, if we ever had our printer or copier stolen, potentially liable for that. And I skipped over bags, purses, etc., but I wanted to mention that with our home offices. If you have a home office and you print out documents, all those documents need to be secured under lock and key. Or if you have them in documents in your bag or your purse because you're collecting them from the tenants and transmitting them to the listing agent or the brokerage or the owner, you got to be aware that you have those, and you have to be sensitive with how you manage that information. The law is that any documents need to be under lock and key, any physical documents, or encrypted and securely stored. So the BLP policy on personal information security are designed to help limit your liability and ours, and must be followed at all times. If you are unclear about our WISP policies in any way, watch this video again, read our WISP handout, or see me. Make sure you're clear on these guidelines and you're adhering to them. Very important. So let's talk about printed information. In our office, each team is given a locked file storage cabinet that shall remain locked at all times, and keys are never to be duplicated. We will give you a key to the lockbox. If you lose that key, we can have new locks put in. Those locked file storage cabinets must remain locked at all times, meaning don't leave your key in the box while you're working on it. Open it up, take your folder out, put it back in. If you go on an appointment, put that file box back into the storage cabinet and lock the door again. But that cabinet should always stay locked, and those documents should always be in that cabinet unless you're actively working on it. All printed documents should stay in the office at all time and in that designated storage cabinet and box. The reason we say this is because if you keep things online and digital in an encrypted PDF on an encrypted service, so something like Google Drive, where it takes a password to access it, and it's in an SSL environment, digitally speaking, and the document itself is also encrypted, you've made the basic and necessary actions to reasonably protect that information, right? The only exception to this and to printed documents remaining in the office is if you're taking them directly to the lessor or the agent who's representing the lessor. When transferring personal information outside the office, the agent shall take care to protect physical documents from potential theft or loss. Don't just leave your bag on a table with the documents in them. Don't carry more than one transaction at a time unless you're dropping them both off directly. I've seen in the past where people had folders with 10 or 15 transactions in them, and they were walking around with all this personal information for excessive periods of time. Unless you're going from A to B with that document, leave it in the storage cabinet. If for any reason physical copies of personal information are kept outside the office, such as a home office, they must be stored in a locked cabinet. No leaving your files out on your desk, okay? If they contain personal information, they must be in a locked cabinet. At no time shall documents be stored in bags or purses, in a car, or left out on a desk or table. If those documents have personal information in it, they cannot be left out on a desk unless you're actively working on them, and you should never never keep them in your bag or purse while you walk around. So just keep this simple. Whatever you need, put into Google Drive. We've got so many ways of sharing that documentation in encrypted formats. You just do it digitally unless you actually need to move those documents from A to B and they have to be the printed out versions. To be quite frank, we almost never do this there's no real need for paper documents anymore. It's very limited. Really, the only time you guys are ever doing this is putting it in my mailbox for a short period of time when you bill out. We're pretty quick to grab that information from you. I take it into my office, which is locked. I leave it there. So we really minimize our exposure. I'm going to tell you a horror story. Someone had their laptop. This happened in Alston. It's a real case. A leasing manager had a laptop. It did not have a password protection on it. The leasing manager had hundreds and hundreds of applications with all sorts of personal information on his laptop. The laptop got stolen, right? He left it exposed. It wasn't password protected. It wasn't encrypted. And he now is paying a monitoring fee for every single one of those people and is punitively responsible for damages and for any loss that those people might suffer as a result of his action. That's a crippling situation. Even at $5 or $10 a month for credit monitoring, which is part of the requirement if you're found to have violated these basic written information security policies and have compromised somebody's personal information. At $5 to $10 times a few hundred people, that's kind of it. That's $3,000 or more dollars a month that's coming out of your pocket just in monitoring fees. Don't be that person. Take care of your actions. Take care of your customers' documentation so you're not put in that position. So information in digital format, all devices including but not limited to. So anything you use that has personal information on it, tablets, computers, phones, they all must be properly and securely encrypted. A good password and an encrypted hard drive. If you're not sure how to encrypt your phone or your tablet or your computer, trust me, type in the platform you're using. If it's a Macintosh or an Android phone or an Apple phone or Windows phone, a Windows computer or tablet or whatever, you can find a video on how to encrypt that platform. And it is a little timely, an hour, 2 hours in some cases to properly encrypt your computer or phone, but you need to do it and you need to protect yourself. All cloud accounts shall be at the sole exclusive use of the agent yourself, and you shall not share those accounts to anybody else. In other words, no sharing Google Drive accounts, no sharing Dropbox accounts or something like that. Anywhere where you have personal information of your customers stored shall be only your access. I suggest Google Drive. You can share certain folders, but you can restrict access to folders where you might keep personal information. Just be careful that those folders where personal information are encrypted and stored are not shared with anybody else, okay? You can only share information where you've been directed by an authorized offerage of the brokerage, meaning I'm the only person that can tell you that you can share documentation with somebody. So just if you have a question about it, I'm here to ask. That's where I'm here for, to help you out when you ask. Scary enough. You don't have to go it alone. Use my expertise in this. Information in digital format. All computers, digital devices, and accounts will be secured against third-party use. So if you have a phone or a tablet or something of that nature that you're using to access your business files, you cannot share that with your children or your roommates or anything else. If it's a computer where you can set up multiple users and the information can be stored securely between those so that you can restrict access as under a user profile, that's okay. But just make sure you're the only one that has the user profile that you do business under and that you only use that professional profile, that user profile, to you do business under. Don't access your Gmail account from an account that's utilized by a user profile on that computer that's utilized by other people. So you might have if you have a child, and maybe that child uses one profile and can do whatever they want, but where you do business, you have another profile, a different password, a different login, okay? Agents shall utilize secured cloud storage accounts such as Google Drive with access and sharing settings regularly reviewed and verified. Make sure you're checking those access and sharing settings. Don't be change your password regularly. That way, if you happen to log in one place, you can check and by changing the password, that person will be able to be able to access it. One thing that's nice about Google applications, you can actually see all the devices that have logged in and when they last logged in, and you can remove access for any of those devices such that a login is required again. So Google has some great security settings. It's one of the many reasons we utilize their applications so well. Also, Make sure any personal information is deleted from the given device, such as your phone, tablet, computer, when you don't need it anymore. If you keep it on Google Drive and you make sure it's deleted from your computer's hard drive or your phone's hard drive, if it ever gets lost or stolen and hacked, the information won't be there anymore. Like we said, if you're using, since we all use Gmail to access our mail accounts and Google applications, we can shut that device off using the Google account settings. If you're not clear on this, YouTube's got plenty of videos on how to do it, but you regularly want to be clearing out your downloads folder. You regularly want to be making sure all the personal information on your computer is being deleted, and just create a folder where anything you need is backed up there. Quite frankly, Prospect Converter in our office gives you the information you need to contact your customers after the transaction. During the transaction is the only time you should really ever have access to any of their personal information. As soon as the transaction's over, you just don't need it. Get rid of it, delete it, give it to the office, keep their phone number, keep their email address, keep their name, their address, all that stuff you want to keep, but you don't need their social security number. You don't need copies of those checks. You don't need credit card statements. You don't need photo IDs. You just don't need it. And if you don't have it, you can't get in trouble. So you can't get yourself fined. So the less you have, the better off you are. Just keep the basics so you can follow up and do more business with them. Access and termination. When any and all information and personal information collected shall be used and shared only with those parties to whom customer has given consent, such as the lessor, the cooperating or listing officer or agent, the seller or their agent or their attorney in the form of a transaction, your manager, so your team leader may need to help you, and only where agency law is being properly followed. So we need to make sure that if we're in a dual agent situation, that we're disclosed dual agents, that if we're following agency, that we're confidentiality is part of agency, we need to make sure we're following that. Just remember, credit reports shall not be shared with anybody. Again, it's a policy we updated about 2 years ago. And at no point shall credit reports be shared with people. We only pull credit reports for properties that we manage, and we won't share any credit reports we pull with outside parties. Now, again, the credit reports we do not share with anybody anymore for other reasons. However, there are other personal information, such as landlord references, their social security number, so the other agent or landlord can pull that credit report, bank account, the photo IDs with driver's license numbers or passport numbers or student ID numbers. All of that's going to be shared, and that's what gives us the permission to do that. However, those are the only people we can share them with, the lessor, the cooperating agent. If it's a sale, the seller or their agent or their attorney may need to see that information. Copy of the check, of course. If it's a buyer, the buyer's agent may need personal information. It comes up. It's not as common with sales, as I mentioned. It's really rentals where we come into this issue, where we're at most exposure, I should say. Your manager or your team leader is certainly able to look at that, as our office operates under traditional agency, meaning we all represent the customer or client under the same agency relationship that you do. So we all have that agreement in place. However, we need to make sure that proper agency law is being properly followed. So we can't share information that's confidential, and we represent the buyer with the seller unless the buyer's given us permission to share that information with the seller. Just like that we can't share information from the seller that's confidential unless the seller gives us information to share with the buyer. Same thing with the tenant. Unless the tenant gives us permission to share that information, they do that through the application. We have to make sure that line is signed. Then we can share that with the lessor and the lessor's agent or whatever the case may be. Very, very important. Again, credit reports. We only pull credit reports for properties we manage. We do not share them. Interestingly enough, I've had many, many positive relationships come out of the conversation of why we no longer share credit reports. Now is really not the time to get into that, but I am always happy to talk to you, or you're another agent or a landlord doesn't understand why we can't share them. A brief answer to that is brokering of credit reports is illegal under Dodd-Frank, so it's a federal law. Additionally, our agreement with our credit reporting companies are for our use only. Ultimately, the way that Dodd-Frank, the consumer protection law previously cited as part of the written information security policy, as well as our agreement with the credit report company, for all those reasons, it's just better that the the end user, the person who wants to review their credit report, pulls it themselves. Modern credit report policies and services allow the owner to generate their own credit report. If this really becomes a sticking point, one easy solution is for the tenant to provide a credit report and to give us permission to share that with the owner. But the owner, that means that they go to Credit Karma or some other site and they can pull that credit report and share it with us. We can share it with the landlord, and they can view it that way. Finally, upon termination of agency with BLP, if you no longer are going to be working at BLP, we hope you stay for many years, by the way, but people come and go, and that's okay. No personal information shall be provided to any person that does not have an interest in the transaction and is no longer affiliated as an agent within BLP, okay? Upon termination of agency with BLP, all digital copies of personal information shall be transferred to BLP and deleted from your agent-controlled accounts. Think Google Drives, or if you're using Dropbox or anything else. Here's the deal. Don't take the liability on yourself. Get rid of the information. You don't need it. What you do need is that contact information. I've already said this, bears repeating. You need their phone numbers. You need their email addresses. You need their names, you need their mailing addresses. You may want their roommates' contact information, or their, whatever it is. Take the contact information. Don't take the personal information. By exposing yourself to that liability, you're just exposing yourself to potential damages and fines. We don't want to see you go through the type of incidents I talked about earlier. We don't want to see you get crippled financially. There's no need to do that. If you follow the policies as we've outlined herein and on our written information security policy handout, the official documentation that we provided on this, which can be found in our training manual. It can be found in our policies folder on the BLP share if you ever need to refer back to that. Our insurance will help cover you. If you violate these policies and work outside of them, you may be personally responsible. We don't want to see that happen. So with that being said, this is the fair warning. These are the policies. These are the guidelines to follow. Follow them and you won't have anything to worry about. And we hope that's the case. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.